What up, though? You're muted.
Yeah, I was muted. I'm always switching between my production hat, so I'm like, let me make sure I'm
Excellent.
muted so
And your
people don't
host
hear
hat.
things. Yeah,
How you doing? What's going
I'm
on
good.
in Watertown / Fort Drum, New York?
Woo, we fought through a whole blizzard, a
A
whole
whole blizzard.
snowstorm about what
When you
a
saw the
week ago.
pictures of that snow, I'm like, Lord, I done grew up in Michigan all my life, and I
Yeah,
ain't never seen nothing like that. That was crazy.
I wasn't ready.
And your
I
Kevin Hart
turned.
voice.
Yeah, I was not ready at all. I mean, turned into Superwoman for sure. Had to get somebody to plow first, and then I shoveled, salted all the things. But that was a lot of snow. It was like 4 feet of snow.
So glad I
So
made it.
yeah, yeah,
So
we're here.
glad I made
We
it.
are here.
So it's good to see you.
I know it's. I mean, we see each other, but it's like FaceTime and stuff like that. It's not
I can't wait to see you in the Cocoa Bean, aka Kennedy Marie Grigsby.
my cocoa bean. I love
I
her.
can't wait to see my son-in-law too. My son in love.
Yes, he'll be
I know
home
you can't wait.
soon. Yeah, yeah.
And for all
This
the veterans that may be watching or may tune in or may see the stream later, thank you for your service. We appreciate it. Lord
absolutely.
knows we appreciate it. I know I
And
do.
thank the families
Oh
because
yeah,
I did not truly understand the sacrifice of the spouses and their families until like this whole experience
it is
is
truly
yeah.
a sacrifice. And people don't realize that when you have someone that is serving
Hmm.
that service. My saying, sir, I love. It's not original service is the rent we pay for the space we occupy,
Hmm.
but that rent is a heavy cost for a lot of people, and a lot of times, it's the families that pay the most.
Hmm.
So it's good to be back at Chief Chat, our podcast, and me and Kayla Simone Grigsby, the super dope producer, the super dope co-host, the esthetician, the mom, the wife, the dopest daughter on the planet that I love with all my heart. And
Me
she
too.
has my face, minus a mustache
And
and
some
her
hair.
and some hair.
Yeah.
Well, minus hair for me, not minus
Yeah.
hair for you. Uh, but that's how it goes. But I love this platform for us for a couple of reasons. The narrative about black men and their children, even though you're my adult child, and the
I
fact that
wasn't always this way.
I know you were once my little cocoa bee, but now
Hmm.
that you are, a mom, a wife, entrepreneur, business person, it's just good to talk to you as a peer. And I think that's hard for black parents a lot of times to realize that once your child is an adult and they're out of the house and they're doing their own thing, they're not your child anymore. And you have to depend on what you put in them to manifest itself. And if it don't feel good to you, it probably goes back to what you sowed into them because you reap
Hmm.
what you sow. That's not always the case. Sometimes people go sideways for their various reasons, but
Hmm.
I feel super blessed. I need to write a book about parenting.
I feel like in the 2 years that I've been blessed to be a parent, I can write something. Like I want it to be something about things that I've learned. Like maybe I'll start doing videos on things that I've learned since becoming a mom
I think
because
that's a good idea because they do have books about it, but experientially living it
hmm
and contemporaneously talking about it,
hmm
those are two different things. And that's the beauty in blogs, podcasts, social media to a certain extent. That a lot of these things you can, help some people out real time because postpartum depression is real.
yeah.
And for those mothers that are out there that don't have a husband or don't have a significant other
Hmm.
that's meaningfully contributing to their child's life, that's a heck of a task.
Yeah.
Raising a child with two parents, fully employed, doing everything is a task.
Yeah.
So for those she roles out there that's doing it without the support you should have, God bless you. You are
Absolutely.
absolutely amazing, superstars, rock stars. And, it is just, um, it's just awesome, awesome.
Hmm.
Uh,
It's almost like one of the things that I was talking to mom about this the other day, like not just things that I learned from my child, but
mhm.
like things that I learned from my child that make me reflect on my faith. Like it's crazy the parallels that I can draw now from what God wants for us and what we want for our children.
Right.
Simple example. My child has never wanted for any food anything. And like clockwork, and we're getting better now because she's starting to say, I want milk, milk,
Right.
milk. She knows how to say octopus, but for whatever reason, she didn't want to say milk. I'm like, say milk. And so she's like, whining. And I know that the whine and the point to the refrigerator is, I want milk. Okay, fine. I go to pour the milk. And this child is going absolutely ballistic, okay? Like falling out on the floor. And I'm like, you see me
Pouring the
pouring
milk.
the milk. I pour the milk every day. You have never asked for the milk and I not gotten the cup,
Right.
reached into the refrigerator, pulled
And
the
got the
milk
milk.
out,
Hmm.
poured the milk, handed it to you. Never done anything sick like, my milk, psych, just playing.
Right.
Never done that, right? And so I'm like, God's probably looking at us every day like, bruh, you see me bless you and pull you through
Yeah.
time and time
Aha.
and time and time again. And
Aha.
yet, the moment something doesn't happen the exact way you want it to, the moment
Lose your
something is
mind.
exactly what you lose your mind. We like the Israelites, Lord,
Mm.
you said we was going to the promised land. Where's that? Like,
Where is it? Where's
and
that?
I'm just like, my
Well,
child is literally my Bible right now.
well,
Like,
first of all, let me thank you because when that comes up in a sermon, uh, next time I'm blessed to preach at Triumph Church, I will be using that analogy. I think it's a very appropriate, but it is actually a very appropriate analogy. From a spiritual standpoint, the same God that did it before, the same God that'll do it again.
like he's gonna do it over
You
and
gotta
over again.
trust him. Gotta
You have to have
trust him.
faith in the process.
Absolutely. That was good. That was good. I've taken a mental note there.
That's fine.
Um, you know, I appreciate it. And I'm going to give you credit for the analogy.
I appreciate it.
Probably the first 2 or 3 times I preach it. After that, it belongs to me.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Although we do have now video evidence to show
Hmm.
the origin of where the analogy came from, but
Somebody will say
very
it's
appropriate.
photoshopped. Whatever.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But you know what? As much as I don't want to talk about this cat, I think it's important too, because context is everything, and
Hmm.
to understand what's going on. Yay, again, can't believe our last podcast we're talking about him. This guy is still dominating the airwaves,
Yep.
and it's a balance between giving him a platform for foolishness. However, sometimes you got to address that foolishness too. Your granddad used to tell me, wherever you show off on me at, that's where you get it at.
Hmm.
So you do have to address certain things. You just can't let them hang out there.
Yeah.
This guy is on Infowars with that idiot that was sued and owes the parents um, that their children were killed in a massacre. Uh, I think close to $1 billion is
Hmm.
judged against him. Alex Jones. So Kanye is on there with a hood and a mask. He's praising Adolf Hitler. I mean, how attention starved do you have to be?
Right.
I can't even blame it on him being a mental issue anymore because mental don't make you stupid.
Yeah.
And so there's I don't know if I told you this story before. Your granddad told me, and I've shared it before. But there's a man that was in a mental institution, and
Yeah. We
as
talked
he
about it
yeah,
last stream. Yeah.
and as he's in the mental institution, the guy, his wheel falls off near the mental institution. As the patient is looking outside, he sees the man that's befuddled. He doesn't know what he's going to do.
Hmm.
So he tells the man, "Look, why don't you take one lug off of the other three wheels, which would leave each wheel with three lugs,
Hmm.
jack the car up, put three lugs on the other one, and then you'll have a stable way to drive your car until you get the other lugs. And the guy is just befuddled and looks and said, "Well, I thought you were crazy." And the man said, "I
Mhm.
am crazy, but I'm not stupid."
Mhm.
And that's how I feel about Kanye. He's crazy, but he's not stupid.
Yeah.
And what he's doing is so divisive and so dangerous. But then, so okay, let's get off of that. Balenciaga. Yeah, I know. So Balenciaga has a campaign, and they have children in, you know, in gear, or teddy bears in gear that the children
Yeah.
are holding, that represent BDSM or sexual bondage, a fetishized, fantasized, should be adult, nowhere near children,
Mhm.
sexualizing children at all. But they do a campaign about that. And Kanye is now talking about he doesn't want to cancel Balenciaga. Well, you probably don't want to cancel them because you're making money off of them, number one.
Right.
And then number two, how do you excuse Balenciaga for this? Somebody had to look and say, you know what? I like this. Let's go with it. Let's run with it. Somebody had to do that. And it had to go through a whole so somebody had to do storyboards.
Mhm.
Somebody had to set up photo shoots.
Mhm.
Somebody had to take the pictures. Somebody had to
Mhm.
design the clothes. Somebody had to find the teddy bear. Somebody had to find the kids. It goes through all of this. And then somebody had to say, boom, let's publish it. How do you absolve Balenciaga from that? Kim Kardashian, she is playing around with it,
Mhm.
but this is the thing, and people got to realize, and let's kill this notion. Money is not the root of all evil. If you say that, you are misquoting the Bible. The Bible
Mhm.
does not say money is the root of all evil. As a matter of fact,
Money answereth all
the
things.
Bible says money answereth all things.
Mhm.
The Bible says the love of money is the root of all evil. And
Absolutely.
and we have people so enthralled with getting the bag, and they associate their self-worth with their net worth. And you
Mhm.
got people with net worth that's hundreds of millions of dollars, but their self-worth is negative millions
In the trash.
in the trash,
In the trash.
because you got a trash mentality. And the
Mhm.
Bible says a fool and his money will soon be parted. Now, it may be parted from the standpoint that you lose it, or it may be parted from the standpoint that God makes the call and you got the answer, and
Mhm.
you go to the upper
And you
room.
and you can't take it to the upper room with you.
You can't take it because you have never seen a Brinks truck go to a graveyard. It just don't happen. Uh, Somehow we've got to reprioritize our thinking around what wealth is for,
Mhm.
and and the fact that it belongs to God. It don't belong to us. We're stewards over what God possesses us with. And what I'm afraid that in this capitalistic society that we live in, it capitalizes on profits, and everything is about profits and net
Mhm.
gains. That our country, because well, let me put it this way: the average dynasty, and this is throughout world history, lasts approximately 250 years. It's the
Yeah.
Roman Empire. You go back, um, French Empire, all of them, 250 years max.
Mhm.
United States is a little bit over 250 years old, and you can see the disintegration of what this country espouses to be. Now,
Mhm.
let's be clear: it ain't never been that for Black folks.
Absolutely not.
It's never been that. The Constitution wasn't written for us.
Mhm.
I mean, all these different things that we, hold high in high esteem, it is by the grace of God that it applies to us because
Mhm.
plain text, when you are start to tap into humanity, you understand that the melanin or the lack thereof in somebody's skin, the curl in their hair, the thickness of their lips, um, that is not what defines a person.
Mhm.
Race is a construct that in America that we've prostituted and bastardized. so that the rich can get richer and the poor can stay poor, and
Mhm.
poor whites and poor blacks and poor Mexicans and poor Chinese and poor, I mean, you name it, we all fighting while the rich folks watch us fight for crumbs. Um, because, and the reason why I say it's wealth driven, because you can have Kanye West sit at the table with white supremacists and they're comfortable with him there,
Right.
and
And
they're
he's
comfortable,
comfortable being
and
there.
he's comfortable being there. So it can't be color. So it's a mentality. It's a thought process,
Mhm.
and it's not the white skin that makes them feel superior, even though that's what's been sold, and that's how white supremacy dominates because it convinces the working class and the lower class
That
white that
will at
even
least.
though at least I ain't black.
Mm-hmm. Which is why they say comparison is truly the devil.
It's
Like to
a kill.
compare yourself,
Yeah.
it can truly do something to you because
Mhm.
you're thinking in your head, you're rationalizing something that
Yeah.
absolutely doesn't make sense,
Yeah.
and you're in the same boat.
Hmm.
Literally could be in the same boat or poorer than black folks, and in
Yeah.
your mind, you're like, well, at least I'm not black.
Right. And that's the whole thing about white supremacy. And the unfortunate part about it, it is sold to and it is profited on and by some of the poorest and least educated whites in the country.
Mm-hmm.
And now you otherize black folks and you otherize Latinos and you otherize LGBTQ people and you blame them for everything because somebody gotta be the culprit.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why um, Donald Trump didn't create it.
Oh
He
no,
but what he did
he
was
just
he
gave
gave it
her.
voice.
Mhm.
He gave it voice and he gave it an opportunity to spread and fester like a cancer. And that's how 40%, 45% of the country can in their conscience vote for somebody that vile. Because, and don't mistake this, Donald Trump is in a lot of trouble right now.
Mhm.
Republicans are turning on him. I mean, just as fast as a New York minute. But it is not because, Kayla, they find that his behavior is reprehensible. It's that he's not winning.
Mhm.
So when he became president, really on a fluke because he lost the popular vote by 3 million,
Mhm.
but he won the electoral college, which is jerry rigged. But
Mhm.
that's how he won. And he has never had a majority of Americans supporting him from the day he took office.
Mhm.
He's ran on what's called a plurality, and he's got just enough of a segment to dominate and control a segment of a segment. But he's never had the full support of the country. And it's starting to show up now. And now that they continually lose, because when he was president, he lost both houses,
Mhm.
Senate and the House of Representatives. He lost his reelection and still did not get a majority. And in the midterm this year, when he was supposed to, or the Republicans were supposed to have record gains in
Mhm.
flipping the House, they barely got a majority. And Kevin McCarthy is fighting for his life trying to be Speaker of the House. You know, but what I can take heart in is that God is true
Yep.
and that um, evil works. Be not envious of evil doers or evil works or envious of the things they get from it because it's going to come to an end. And people of integrity have to continue to stay together and stand together and stand against the corporate wealth. So Balenciaga, um, now listen. Now I'm gonna say this: you can't boycott something you couldn't afford in the first place.
Well,
That was shady, wasn't it?
just a little bit, just a little bit, and also, I mean, you
So
got to
don't tell
think
me you boycotting if you ain't never bought it and you can't
if you've
afford it.
never bought it, yeah, and on top of that, here's a side note, but it's still related.
Hmm.
So Ti comes out and he's like, man, you see Kanye is talking about Balenciaga, but we all got to stick together because when I was talking about Gucci, and I'm like, here we go. Here we go. He's on the soapbox because now we got to talk about what you were talking about and why nobody supported you when it came to Gucci. And it's like, bruh, at the end of the day, we as humans just have to do better. We
Yeah,
have to
we do.
figure out what's a non-negotiable and
And live by that. You
and
know,
truly live by it. Like you said, we can't boycott Balenciaga. We can't. But that I feel like with Ti too, that was not the time to be like, well, when I did it, nobody cared.
right. I think it's, you know,
Play the tiny violins. Here we go.
here we
I'm
go.
like,
The
you
world's
know,
smallest violin.
it like, can we just
Although
stick with what's at hand, the subject at hand,
I
please?
know the tip is funny though.
Mm,
You know what? I go through this thing with Ti. Sometimes I love him. Sometimes he just gets on my last nerve, and I can't explain it. Um,
he gets on my nerves
I don't know
expeditiously.
if it's because intellectual Ti, you know, when he starts to
When he starts saying the one word
the one word
expeditiously, like that's it. Um,
expeditiously.
I don't know. I I I've loved Ti in the past. I think that what makes me kind of rear back from him a little bit is his own bias within his relationships with his kids.
Yeah,
To see how he kind of pacifies his son and his terrible behavior as he's growing up, and how he publicly goes live and cussing people out and telling people how much money he got and all this, that, and the third, acting like he from the streets.
right.
But then you kind of out and embarrass your daughter about her sexuality, and you going to the doctor with her and all this other stuff, and she's the one
Right.
not doing much of anything, just being a lady. I can't get with it, and it's a
Mhm.
societal thing. Is that, oh, we rear our sons one way, but we
Right.
rear our daughters
Goes
another
another
way, and
way.
it's like, no, what's good for him is good for her.
Yep.
So
It's true.
he could be out here ratchet doing whatever he want to do,
Mhm.
talking to people however he want to talk. That needs to be good for Deja, but it's not. And I feel like it's a double standard, because he got to think about all the crap he probably put his wife through and things he's done in the past with his daughter. But you have to raise better men as well. You
Right.
can't just there's this narrative where we put the onus on the woman. You got to cook to keep the man at home. You
Right.
got to keep yourself together. You have to do this. You have to do that. But with men, it's like, oh, he's a provider, so that should be enough for us to
Yeah.
stick with them. But we have
And,
to do oh
right.
so much. So
And
it's
it's
interesting.
not enough, and it's a misguided notion too. So our patriarchal society and what we consider masculinity and how we framed it, it is so bass backwards.
Hmm.
And it really isn't even biblically sound, even though we try to hide behind the Bible to justify some of the misogynistic behaviors
Hmm.
that we demonstrate. I think the greatest lesson for me and your uncle, Bishop Godbee, um, came out of tragedy.
Hmm.
When your grandfather, my dad, had a heart attack at 29. He was a sole provider, construction worker, brick mason, mom, your grandmother, stay at home wife, cook, clean, all that stuff.
Hmm.
Your grandfather had a heart attack at 29 and almost died. Had
Hmm.
open heart surgery when it was still considered somewhat experimental. So he couldn't do manual labor for years. And so we saw our father cook and clean
Hmm.
because even though he couldn't go work a job physically, he still maintained the home. Your grandmother
Hmm.
never came home and had to cook and clean, and dad, so we didn't get caught up in these, well, it's a man's role to keep the outside up and a woman's role to keep the inside up. Mom and dad did what was necessary to make sure that the family was whole. And to
Yep.
me, they, you know, became the perfect example of what a couple in Christ should be.
Hmm.
You do what's necessary to make sure that the family is whole,
Hmm.
that it's healthy, physically, spiritually, and emotionally. And you don't get caught up in all this, ego and, well, I'm the man of the house. Well, if you got to say it, you're probably not.
And I would say even on the opposite end of the spectrum, because we're starting to see this shift, of
Mhm.
course, as women get more and more empowered, which is a great thing.
Right.
I think sometimes there's again those extremes. There's
Mhm.
always a good middle ground where we should
Right.
always aim to,
Mhm.
but there's these extremes where I heard some girl on TikTok the other day, and I can't remember her name, but she was like, I hate when men say I'm looking for a helpmate, because if you're a
Right.
grown man, you don't need help. And I'm like, eh,
Eh,
because
right.
things happen. And when I think when a man refers to a helpmate,
Mhm.
we're not talking about the guys who just sit on the
Right.
couch playing
Mhm.
PS4 all day while
Right.
you work. That's not a man. So let's just get that out the way right there.
Right.
But we're talking about, okay, again, when they say through thick or thin, for better
Mhm.
or for worse, don't just think one sided. Don't think, oh, if I get
Right.
sick, you should be here for me. If
Right.
he gets sick, you need to
You
be
should be
there for
right.
him.
It's a
If
two-way
he
street.
can't provide in the same way, what
Mhm.
are you willing and prepared to do? And if you can't ask yourself those questions
Mhm.
and you can't be honest about the answers, maybe you're not, and I won't even say marriage material, but it's true. Like, because
Yeah.
certain things are just out of our
'Cause
control.
you may not be mature enough or
Yeah.
have the right understanding of what a marital relationship is.
Hmm.
People confuse headship with domination
And with money.
and with money. But headship, if you just look at a body, so number one, if a body don't have a head, the body dies.
Hmm.
So the body and the head, they have to work in concert.
Hmm.
So if my head hears from my stomach that it's hungry, then my head directs
Has
my
to
feet
provide.
to walk to the
Hmm.
refrigerator, controls my hands to open the refrigerator, and constructively allows me to put together a meal to put in my body that benefits the entire body.
Hmm.
The head is not greater than, the head works in conjunction with. So
Absolutely.
it's a level of mutual submission. So when a body doesn't work properly, that's called disease.
Hmm.
So when your grandmother had multiple sclerosis and it started to deteriorate her body, it to me that's representative of a dysfunctional marriage
Hmm.
where the head works. So your grandmother knew that, I
She
know how
could
to
think.
walk,
Hmm.
I know how to talk, I know how to
Hmm.
articulate what I want, but my body won't submit
Communicate that.
to my
Yeah.
head.
Yeah.
So even though my head knows what's best for the body, my body won't submit to the head. That's disease.
And then on the opposite end again, because I'm always not playing devil's advocate
Right,
in this
right.
case, but when we were going through marriage counseling,
Mhm,
Uncle Ronnie, I love him so much, Bishop Godbee. I love that counseling, number one,
mhm.
because if anybody knows my family,
Right.
especially you and him, you
Mhm.
never give us bias
Right.
anything. So
No.
it's always the real. If we always knew if we were gonna come to
Mhm.
dad and uncle for anything, we better be prepared for whatever we was gonna get back. And the same thing with granddad. Like, it
Right.
was always very blunt. And so when we went into counseling, we talked about
Mhm.
headship, but Uncle Ronnie made it very clear. He said, but people always think the head is the most important part. If you don't have a neck, which
Right.
is essentially the
Yeah.
wife. If you're the
Yeah.
head of the house and you don't have a neck, you don't have direction.
Right.
So if you're not listening to your wife, which
Mhm.
could be in sense, sometimes
Right.
people refer to their
Mhm.
wives. I feel like the Holy Spirit is a
Mhm.
consciousness, right? And
Mhm. Yeah.
so sometimes your spouse and your partner is there
Mhm.
to act as your consciousness to
Right.
reel you back in. Oh,
Mhm.
you're making this decision, but okay,
Mhm.
let's think about this and let's
Right.
break this down.
Mhm.
But if you are unwilling to listen to the neck,
Yes.
head is stuck straight, can't
That's
go
right.
anywhere, can't
Exactly.
can't
Exactly.
you got to utilize your whole body when
Right.
you're not, being efficient with what you have.
Absolutely.
So it's interesting
Mhm.
how, we think about dating. And I really just think this whole argument between men and women,
Yeah.
I feel like we all have valid issues that need to be
Mhm.
heard. But I also think that people need to just understand that people are people.
Right.
And
Now to that
so,
point, and I want to point this out
mhm,
because I talked about the head telling the body what to do,
mhm,
but also the head has to submit to the body. So, for instance, if I'm running a marathon and I get a cramp in my calf or my thigh,
mhm,
my body is telling my head, you can't run anymore.
right.
So pain has a purpose. And people, as much as they try to avoid pain, that's why they call high blood pressure the silent killer,
Mhm,
because it damages your organs in your body and you don't know about it.
mhm,
So you should really adhere to pain and listen to what pain is telling you. So pain could be telling you, I'm not really in the shape I need to be in to run a marathon. Pain in my chest while I'm running should be telling my head, okay, slow down, stop. So that's the mutual submission that the Bible refers to in marriage. And that's why God fashioned marriage after a body, or the body of Christ after
Mm-hmm.
marriage, and the church, because it's a mutual submission.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a lordship from the standpoint that the head is dominant over the body, or the body is dominant over
Absolutely.
the head. They work together in concert to do and move and do what a body is supposed to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, you know, when we start to teach men that, and women, but I think
Mm-hmm.
men more so, because women unfortunately have been forced to be man and woman in their
Mm-hmm.
house,
Mm-hmm.
because men in our communities, some with excuse and some because of systemic issues, but
Mm-hmm.
regardless of why it is,
It
Black
doesn't change
black men,
the fact
we're
it
not
needs
as
to be
present in
corrected.
the home as we need to be, and when we're there, we're not living up to the expectations of headship and leadership. Women don't have a problem following a man, but you gotta know where you're going.
You got to know where you're going, and it has to be worth following. Because I
You
ain't
have
gonna follow you off a cliff. Listen,
exactly.
listen. God bless me with a brain, just like He blessed you, and
Yep.
some stuff just does not.
It
It
doesn't
doesn't
make
make
sense.
sense. And if you can't reason with your
Mhm.
partner, if you can't say, okay, let's sit back and talk about this. Is this
Right.
good for the whole of our family, or am I
Exactly.
making premature decisions based off of emotion and
Right.
feeling? And that's one thing that
Mhm.
I know as growing into my adulthood
Mhm.
continuously, right? It's always a spectrum.
Yes.
I have to put emotion aside more often than not. And I know people hate that, right? Because we're in this
Mhm.
world where we should be able to say what we feel and say what
Right.
we think and da da da. But sometimes you have to check your emotions, because your
Yeah.
emotions will have you making decisions
Yeah.
that absolutely don't are
Mhm.
not the best for you at the
Right.
time. But if we're and that's one thing I hate about, I feel like nowadays everything's so impulsive.
Yeah, it is.
Everything is so, let me do it because I feel
Mhm.
like I should, or let me say this because I feel this, and I feel issues in my heart right now and I need to spew it out, not realizing that,
Mhm.
okay, maybe I'm escalating this a little bit. Like I
Right.
have internal monologues all
Yeah.
the
All the
time.
time. But
Oh, I
that's
talk to
important.
myself all
That
the time.
that's important. I just did this on. I did a short TikTok on practice to pause.
Hmm.
Apple is going to save some marriages. It's going to save some relationships. It's going to save some lives, because they
Hmm.
finally got an edit function and an unseen function on their iMessages.
Yeah.
Because in impulse, once it's things you can't take back. And I got
Hmm.
to add a third one too, because I used to say two. One is the words out of your mouth.
Hmm.
The second is bullets out of a gun. But the third is once you hit send. Those are the most dangerous times out of impulse,
Hmm.
because they can change the topographical landscape of an entire person's world. But when you have the opportunity to reflect, that's why the Bible says, wait on the Lord and be of good courage, and he shall strengthen their heart. Bible also says, all things are lawful for me, but all things are not expedient. Just because you can say it doesn't mean you should say it.
Hmm.
Timing, thought, a forethought, how it's said, because it's not always what you say, it's how you
That's how
say
you
it.
say it. Yeah.
Iyanla Van Zant did this thing with a woman talking to a man about an issue with their bonus children.
Hmm.
And the way the woman started in, the man was immediately defensive. Ayanla helped her rephrase what she was saying.
Hmm.
And ostensibly, she came back and said, look, I know how you raise our son, and I
Hmm.
know the potential in him, and I know that he's not living up to that potential. How can we work together to let him be, or allow him to be, or help him be the best kid he can be, as
Hmm.
opposed to your kids are bad and this and that. So it's not always what you say, it's how you say it. And a lot of people, oh, you just BSing, or you spinning me, or you gassing me. There's a difference. When you gassing somebody, you just flat out lying. But being kind and considerate and how you phrase words, because Maya Angelou, this has been just one of the sayings that has really changed my life. People will forget what you say, they'll forget what you did, but they will not forget how you make them feel.
Hmm.
And when you start to conduct yourself in that level of maturity and communication, you can lead people in a way that you never led them before.
Mhm.
But this generation of, I say what I want, I'm that B, I'm that N, this is just how I am. It's a whole bunch of broke people just being how they are. It's a whole lot of destroyed lives and relationships that you cannot go back. Some things that can be said are so hurtful
Mhm.
that, if you say them in anger, it'll destroy, I mean, literally relationships and marriages.
Mhm.
And I've learned that the hard way. So
Mhm.
I don't say this to scorn anybody, but at some point, as the OG, which I'm Unc now, I'm Unc to everybody.
I need to play that TikTok.
Oh, it's a TikTok for everything.
It is.
I'm not creepy Unc, because there's
No,
creepy Unc.
no,
I'm just
no.
Unc. Everybody, think I'm the wise cat, because of the bald head and the gray. But and you should get some sense when you get older.
Mhm.
It'd be a damn shame to be 55 and still thinking like I'm 25, and
You
talking like I'm 25.
and that part right there, I feel like, it's a crime to mature and grow sometimes,
Yeah.
especially you notice like in certain friend circles and
Hmm.
the different places, like people criticize you for changing, but it's like, isn't that what I'm supposed to do? Am I not supposed to elevate? Am I not supposed to be a better person?
Hmm.
Every time you see me, and I think sometimes change,
Hmm.
it scares people who aren't
Yeah.
willing to. You know what I mean?
And we got to stop apologizing for maturing,
Hmm.
because people will try to hold you to the level of maturity that they met you at.
Exactly.
And, unfortunately, elevation requires separation sometimes.
Hmm.
So I don't think I'm better than anybody, but I do think that my thinking has evolved to a point where there's certain spaces I can't stay in, I can't exist in,
Hmm.
because I can't live to the full potential of what God called me to do if I stay in that mentality.
Hmm.
So the men I choose to have in my circle respect their wives. Um, they love their children. They're not deadbeats. And then the men I meet that don't fit that criteria, I try to counsel and mentor
Yeah.
and bring them up to that level. But we have to stop dumbing ourselves down and bringing ourselves down to a certain level so we can fit in.
Hmm.
Um, Fitting in is not a requirement or a prerequisite for success. It's not,
No.
because if you have that mentality, as they say, if you got nine broke friends, you bound to be the 10th.
Hmm.
And I mean spiritually broke, because I don't equate money with anything other than it's a resource.
Hmm.
It's a valuable resource. It's a commodity, but that's not what that doesn't make you a good person. That doesn't make you a
Hmm.
person I want to be around. I turn down invitations, Kayla, all the time to go to parties,
Absolutely.
to go to houses, to dinners, to meet with people, because I'm at a state in my life to where integrity has to drive everything I do.
Hmm.
And then to boot, once you put on this, Christian title and you accept your calling, you got to walk worthy of that calling. And there have
Yeah.
been times in my life that I have not. And I just don't ever want to go back to that. And then I want to help people that may be in the position that I was in
Hmm.
not make the same mistakes that I've made.
Hmm.
Pastor Cheryl Brady, and you've heard me say this quite a few times,
Hmm.
said this, and at a pivotal time in my life, my mistakes cost so much. Why should you have to pay the same price?
Right.
And that's the benefit of experience. That's the benefit of going through stuff, so that number one, you can learn from it, but number two, you can help somebody learn the hard lesson that you had to learn the hard way. It just
Hmm.
don't make no sense to run into a brick wall when I saw you do it and you didn't go through it.
Hmm.
Why would I do the same thing? So that's wisdom that we have to pass down to make sure generationally we don't make the same mistakes and we start to break generational curses.
Yep. I
So
couldn't have said it better.
I appreciate you. As little Ronnie said, appreciate you.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, but I appreciate the opportunities that you and I have been given to have platforms to talk about these kind of things, because I think it's important from another standpoint as well. Um, Listen, I am never going to be the one to try and convince a white person or a racist person that I got a code switch to be what they think I ought to be.
Mm-hmm.
I'm black. I'm proud to be black. I embrace being black. I love the melanin in my skin. All the challenges that come from this country, I wouldn't want to be anything else.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's important for understanding to go about to be able to have conversations with other communities that have misconceptions about what it means to be black,
Mm-hmm.
because we want the same things y'all want.
Mm-hmm.
I want my children to grow up in a safe and healthy environment. I don't want them to be subjected to discrimination.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want them to have any suffer any lack. I want them to have quality education. I want them to have access to everything that an American should have.
Mm-hmm.
We don't differ on those things.
At
Where I
all.
have a problem is when you try to deny me of those things, and people that look like me, you feel that it's an intimidation to you for me to experience life at that level. That's where we always gonna have a problem. And that's where we always going to have an advocacy that we have to fight. I don't think that I think racism is steeped in so much ignorance
Mm-hmm.
of what people perceive people to be, the tropes about people, the prejudices that people have, and then how we're portrayed in
Mm-hmm.
in media.
Mm-hmm.
85% of the media is controlled by about 14 or 15 companies
Mm-hmm.
across the world that control the messages and the images of black people. Um, as much as I love the hip hop culture, I'm so conflicted by it.
Yeah.
First, because it is such an amazing representation of black creativity and talent. But what I don't like is that it's prostituted, and that creativity and talent, it is utilized to reinforce every negative stereotype about black people,
Yep.
that we're hypersexualized, that we're savages, that we murder each other. I'm trying to think the last time I heard about a country music singer getting killed by another country music singer.
Oh no, because they just lay out their emotions so calmly, so sweet.
And I say that tongue in cheek, but it is unfathomable that we are now getting used to hip hop artists being killed as if that's just a part of the culture.
And then we're so desensitized. Like I was watching a video
Mhm.
the other day. Of course, like clearly y'all see TikTok is my guilty pleasure, but there's a young rapper called, I want to say his name was something Naughty,
Mhm.
and on this app is called the Naughty Bot. Like people are doing
Mhm.
this dance.
Yeah.
The dance is mimicking how the young man got stabbed.
Yep.
14.
14 years old.
And people are on TikTok doing the dance, poking their hips because
Yeah.
that's how he got stabbed.
Yeah.
What world do we live in
Yeah.
that
But
that's okay?
you know what's interesting about that? And I like TikTok too. But the TikTok algorithm in
Pushes it.
China, so the TikTok algorithm in China, it pushes education, it pushes
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
arts, it pushes wholesomeness, it pushes things that feed their culture with positive images.
Mm-hmm.
The algorithms that they use in the United States, it pushes the hypersexuality, the twerking, the violence. That's intentional. That is not by mistake. That is not an accident.
And it's interesting you say that because there's been rumblings about protests in China and
Hmm.
how they're protesting, their regime
Yeah.
because of them being on actual COVID lockdown right now. When whispers that the rest of the world has
Hmm.
been roaming free. Now the
Yeah.
caveat to that is like, yes, they're pushing. It's still control, but it's funny how Americans don't think we're controlled how the Chinese are, but we are
Yep. We
by
are.
the images that we're fed. So while they're enraged because
Hmm.
what their internet is intaking
Right.
and what they're getting
Hmm.
is controlled, so that they don't know what else is going on in the rest of
Right.
the world.
Hmm.
We are being blinded by
Yeah.
all this nonsense.
Hmm.
So, in a sense, it's like it's not right in either case
Right.
because you're robbing them of their right to know about
Hmm.
what's going on in fear of you losing control over your
Right.
people.
Hmm.
But then over here, we're being controlled, but we think that we're free.
Right.
Like we think
Right.
that, oh, we're seeing these images because this is what we liked within
And
our
we
algorithm.
choose
No,
to.
they're
Yeah.
feeding certain stuff because there's certain stuff that's in my algorithm that I'm
Mhm.
like, okay, I don't normally like this stuff, so why
Right.
is it here? Like
Why is
for a
it?
while, it was like and the more I
Mhm.
like Jesus content, it was like
Yeah.
tarot cards, psychics,
Right.
witchcraft. I was like, what is this?
Yeah.
Like, this is not what I'm interested in. I never
Mhm.
like it. I don't have anything against anybody. If that's
Yeah.
what you believe
Yeah.
in, that's on you.
Right.
That's just not me. And so I'm like, I'm not liking this content, but it's odd that the more that I like content that talks about scripture and that talks about my faith and my
Then
beliefs,
it tries to push you to something else.
and I'm like, what is this?
Yeah. It's crazy. And it's intentional, and we have to be, so, and this is the problem. It's not that everybody can't discern,
Mm-hmm.
but when you have an absence and a presence missing in homes where children are being raised by it. So when you were coming up, I didn't keep you from listening to hip hop.
Mm-hmm.
I just explained to you what's real and what's not.
Mm-hmm.
I explained to you what are the consequences of doing ABC. So you could hear it for what it is, entertainment. But for the child that does not have that influence in their life, they see it as a reality that they're trying to live. And that's the difference. So that's why it could be so destructive on one hand, yet entertaining on the other. You can, be at a point of spiritual maturity, of just regular maturity, where you can just enjoy it for what it is.
Mm-hmm.
And there are other people that see it and like, oh my God, they balling out. I got to live like that. I got to get a gun. I got to do this. I got to, I'm hard. I'm this. And not realize that half these cats, they renting the cars. The studio is buying stuff. They and by the time they're used up by the industry, they have to pay so many fees that the only money they make is off touring. That's the dirty little secret. They don't own their masters, which is starting to become much more prevalent to understand how to own your masters. But when you're a hungry person trying to come up, you don't think about all that stuff. You just know I'm on TV all the time and everybody
Mm-hmm.
knows me, or I'm a social media icon and everybody knows me, and nobody has taught you the business. So that's where, I think we have to really, as a community and as a culture, really mentor each other. But in order to mentor somebody, got to be willing to listen.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the key. That is the key.
How much time we got? We had a comment that come up, so I was gonna put it on the screen so you can
Go ahead.
see. Um, because I'm not quite sure if I understand the question, but and I think this is in reference to when we were talking about, being unapologetically yourself, not code switching. I believe that's maybe what they were referring to.
I think that's a fair assessment. And I think that's where we have to develop people to be more spiritually courageous.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll start choking now.
It's okay.
But just because the crowd does it doesn't make it right.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a time when it was legal to own black people.
It doesn't make that right.
That was the law. It was the belief of America,
Mm-hmm.
and it was morally reprehensible. And it took a few people to recognize the inhumanity of it and stand and fight against it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, I think, what we're lacking societally is people to have the courage that even if my check gets cut off, even if I lose endorsements, even if the NBA team or the NFL team, cuts me, um, we need more Colin Kaepernicks. People that are
Okay.
willing to sacrifice riches for the right, understanding that there's something greater than my personal wealth. And I think when we get back to that, it's unfortunate, but Dr. King, uh, when he was killed, when he was murdered, he
Hmm.
was assassinated. He was not a man of wealth when he died. Malcolm X was, I mean, struggling to feed his family and keep things going, died virtually penniless. I mean, some of the greatest heroes, Medgar Evers, murdered, um, died virtually penniless because they understood that somebody has to fight the fight. It's going to make it possible for Ralph Godbee to be chief of police,
Hmm.
make it possible for Kayla Simone to be a producer on a radio station in a major market. Somebody had to pay the price, and so I thank God that you have the Colin Kaepernicks, um, and we have to, and let's be honest. I don't particularly like how LeBron initially handled Kyrie's situation. I think he was too quick to jump on the, let's cancel
Hmm.
Kyrie. But he reflected,
Yeah.
and LeBron has done so much great for the community, and has spoke out so many times on issues that affect Black and Brown people, that I dare not discard LeBron for one misstep, um, that I perceive to be a misstep. I think he's a dynamic man. I think he has done so much for the Black community. He's sent kids to college. He's
Hmm.
opened schools. He's advocated for police reform. I mean, he's done so many things, and he did them in the prime of his career and didn't worry about whether he was going to lose support or endorsements.
Hmm.
Muhammad Ali, the late Muhammad Ali, lost millions, was banned from the sport that he was absolutely the best at for 5 years in his prime. And in spite of that, was still the greatest boxer to ever live. Um, in spite of all he lost.
Hmm.
That's the kind of courageousness that we're missing. And I think I don't think, I know that's why politicians are not resonating with voters anymore, because you don't have people that are willing to say what's right, do what's right
Yeah.
at their own expense. But it's now
It,
serving my job, you know.
except for I did see some clips and it kind of reminded me of like the lady was basically saying, oh, we need to get back to this time,
Yeah.
and it was when Obama and John McCain were running against each other,
Yes.
and John McCain was talking to the people that were
Right.
supporting him, and
Mhm.
they were like, "Well, Obama's this, Obama's that," and he said, "No, he's a great guy.
Yeah,
We
he's a
just
great.
happen to be running against each other." And I'm like, exactly,
Yes.
like this whole tit for tat, demonizing
Mhm.
somebody just because they're your competition or they're in the same field as you or
Right.
you're going after the
Mhm.
same thing. It's absurd
Yeah.
because at the end of the day, like how Donald Trump
Mhm.
did, you're running against a certain party
Mhm.
based off of what somebody else didn't do, pointing the
Right.
finger. Now, when you
Mhm.
get in office, okay, what are your policies
Right.
about?
What are you
What
gonna do?
makes you an
Right.
individual? What makes you the right person for the job? What is not what didn't make them the best
Right.
fit for the job, but now what show us what makes you the right person for that position. And I feel like
Mhm.
a lot of today's society is we always want to blame
Right.
somebody. We
Mhm.
always want to,
Yeah.
very much point the finger at somebody
Exactly.
else. And it's like, okay, cool, but like
Mhm.
you are the what you say, the common denominator in every
Right.
single situation.
You're
So what
yourself.
about you?
Right. What have
Can
you
you
done for me?
self-assess in this
Exactly.
situation that you can take accountability for? Because
Mhm.
there's just some times where we have to stop and think like, okay,
Yeah. So, and for the viewers that may not be familiar with the situation with Obama and McCain, when Obama was running for president, they were at a town hall, and
mhm,
during the town hall, a older white woman got up and she made some disparaging comments about Barack Obama, his heritage. Now, some perceive her calling him a Muslim as a slur, um, even though she intended it, that
mhm,
wasn't the issue. Being a Muslim ain't is not. You
Yeah,
know,
it's not.
right.
It's a religious
But
belief.
what she was inferring is that Obama was un-American,
Hmm.
and that his name Barack Hussein Obama, like he's a terrorist or was trying to infiltrate the political system. And John McCain stopped her and said, "Ma'am, no, no. Barack Obama is a great man. He's a good husband. We just differ on policy." And that's the kind of political courage that's missing in American politics now.
Hmm.
And the Republican Party has completely gone off the rails with white supremacy and white supremacists, and they are not only just playing footsies with them; they are welcome at the table now. So
Hmm.
that's the difference. So, Kayla, that was an excellent analogy and point to bring up as we kind of talk about and kind of wind down this Chiefs chat. As we look at current events and we look at the political landscape, um, we really have to stay involved. But in staying involved, we got to hold people accountable
Hmm.
to a standard of truth that doesn't matter whether you're Democrat or Republican, a standard of conduct that is respectful of people that doesn't matter if you're Democrat or Republican, and and stop just damn lying to be lying, just to hold a position. I mean, it's just ridiculous.
It's
I
weird.
mean, can look at the sky and say, well, the sky is green. Well, if a Democrat said it, then it must be wrong. Well, I mean, that's stupid. And Chris Rock said this years ago. Um, Anybody that makes up their mind on an issue before they even know what it is, just because they're part of a party, that's ignorant. That's stupid.
Very.
And that's how we have become with our two-party political system. So we really have to be more intelligent in vetting our candidates, questioning them, and then who we vote for and why. That's very important. Kayla, it's good to be back.
It's great to be back.
Good to be back. I can't wait to see my son in love and you and Kennedy when he returns
Same.
home this week, and when y'all make y'all way to the metropolitan Detroit area. Again, to
Same.
the veterans, thank y'all for y'all service. To the families of veterans, thank you for what you sacrifice. And that's for all people that are in public service.
Hmm.
That give a part of their family member to other people. You sacrifice that relationship so they can help somebody else.
Hmm.
Hey, peace, love y'all. Tell somebody about Chiefs Chat. Follow us on YouTube. Follow my Instagram page at Chief Ralph Godbee. My Twitter, Chief Godbee. Facebook, Chiefs Chat. We have a page. Follow us on all those platforms. Tell somebody about it. Share. And we'll be back to you soon with another episode of Chiefs Chat. Love y'all. Love you,
Bye.
Kayla.
Love you too.
Peace.